Right, everybody. Fantastic. Let's get going. Um, so welcome to the London Friends of Green Spaces network. We're the network for all the friends groups in London. There's about 1,000 groups. And I haven't seen the latest figures from um, the London Parks for London, but they have an accurate figure. Um, so maybe if someone comes from them, they could give us an update. So yes, so we have a range of different meetings. We have showcase meetings where one or two groups showcase some theme aspect of what they've achieved, and then we have a discussion. We have coordination strategy meetings where uh, we really get sort of borough-wide reports on how forums are getting along, and we discuss London-wide strategy. We have social meetings, which are coming up in January, and we have these general meetings with a theme that anybody can pitch in. So this meeting today is a general meeting, and the agenda's in the chat there. So let's start off with very, very brief introductions. So just name and group and borough. So I'm Dave, Friends of Lord Shipwreck, Haringey Friends of Parks Forum. So I'll just read people out. Tricia and then Roger.
Right. Good evening, everybody. I'm involved with Epping Forest and particularly Wanstead Park, which is in Redbridge.
Fantastic. And I presume, Roger, you're taking notes as well of just the
Yeah,
attempt.
I'm busy scrolling.
Scrolling, yes. Roger and then John.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Roger Jones from West Ham Park in Newham, Friends to West Ham Park.
Fantastic. John and then Miriam.
John Poole from the Friends of Woodcock Park, Kenton, London Borough, Brent.
Miriam and then Pat.
Miriam, Caledonian Park and Edward Square, and I'm on the Islington Forum.
Fantastic. Pat and then Peter.
Friends of Wandsworth Park. Me, Pat?
Pat, yes.
Friends of Wandsworth Park and Wandsworth Forum.
Fantastic. Peter, then Tim.
Peter Woodward from Chislehurst and St Paul's Craig Common in the London Borough of Bromley.
Tim and then Annabelle.
Hi, evening. It's been a long day. Tim Webb, London Parks and Gardens. Hello.
Annabelle and then Jane. Annabelle, you're muted. Oh. Jane, do you want to introduce yourself while Annabelle's sorting her thing?
Right, that now I hope.
Okay, let Annabelle go first.
Go on, Annabelle.
You got me, okay. Friends of Ravenscourt Park, Hammersmith and Fulham.
Hammersmith and Fulham, great. Jane and then Desmond and then Larry.
Jane Andrews, Friends of Crofton and Sparrow Woods, and I'm a member of the Bromley Forum.
Okay. Bromley are out in force. Okay, Desmond and then Larry.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, there's Blake from Friends of Telford Park and surrounding it.
In which borough?
Newham.
Newham. Okay. Larry and then Karen.
Yes, hi, I'm Larry Herbert. I'm a friend of Keston Common, and I'm also then the chair of the Bromley Friends Forum in the London Borough of Bromley.
Karen and then David and then Sean.
Karen, I'm Abundance London, which works with several friends groups in Hounslow and increasingly in Ealing, in the sort of Chiswick, Hammersmith, Ealing area.
Okay, David and then Sean.
Hi, I'm David Ford. I'm from Lee in Lewisham. I'm a member of quite a few local friends groups, but the most active at the moment is the Friends of Sutcliffe Park, which is in Greenwich Borough, because we're only a couple of 100 metres away from the borough. And we've just set up Friends of Great Meadow, and Harmony Wood, which is just off the A20. I don't know if anybody knows the former Dutch House pub, which is now a tea place. Very, very recommend it on that. And
Okay. No advertising. Let's move on. But thanks for that. Sean, and then Jenny, and then I had Joe. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sean Wilkinson from Friends of Whitewebb's Park in Enfield.
Jenny, and then Joe.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Jenny, and I'm from Norbury. We're the southernmost point of Lambeth, but the northernmost point of Croydon. So we straddle both.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Joe, and then Karen, and then Larry. We've had Larry, and then Elspeth. Joe.
Friends of Barnard Park in Islington.
Great stuff. Karen, and then Elspeth, and then Sophia.
If
Karen.
if that's me, you've had me.
Oh, we've had you already. Okay, Elspeth.
I can do it again.
Hi, I'm a very new joiner to the MPGA, so Pan London really. Actually, I live in Haringey, but
okay.
And this
Great
is my first. I'd hoped to lurk, not to be exposed, so this is a bit of a shock.
You want to say what MPGA stands for?
Yes, it's the Metropolitan Public Gardens Association, and we're not that far off 150 years old. We're a grant-giving organisation, small grants to help people take their gardens projects forward.
We'll give you a chance to give a very brief update a bit later on.
Gosh, I've only been to one meeting. So
okay, don't worry.
I'm terribly sorry. You know, this is. I'm not a friends group per se. You know, I'm a company secretary type person, so I'm learning.
Good. That's okay. I can't now. I've lost the plot now. Where we are, Jenny, is it? And
after me, I should think whoever's in the list.
Jenny and I've lost the plot here. Joe, maybe, and Sophia. Jenny Rogers.
You've had me. I'm from Norbury.
Okay, Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm from the charity Habitats and Heritage.
Habitats and Heritage. Okay, great. I can't remember if we had Joe. I've had Joe.
Yes, you had.
We have. All right then. So we've had Sophia, Jean, and then Jeff.
Good evening. I'm Jean Oxborough from Hounslow, and our park is Inwood Park, the oldest park in our borough.
Okay.
And we're very, very new.
Okay. Jeff?
Hey, great. Yeah, this is Jeff from the Friends of Wandsworth Common, from the borough of its namesake.
Fantastic. And just to say that Laura, where it says CPRE London, that's Laura, but Laura's not very well. She helps to coordinate the London network and also Go Parks London, but she's not very well, so she's just sit there in the background if needed. So great. Is that everybody? Alona, we missed you out.
That's because I arrived late. So are we just introducing ourselves briefly?
We are, very briefly.
Right. So my name is Alona, and I'm part of the Lewisham Forum.
Fantastic. All right, I think that's everybody. So, right. So let's go straight into our discussion, which anybody can kind of, pile in on. But basically, we wanted to have a discussion about staffing and resources because we know things are really tight, cuts are continuing to be made, and how people are kind of responding in their borough about budgets and staffing issues, and whether people are lobbying as a borough or how people are coping with lack of staffing and so on. So it's just really a discussion for about maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. And I'll just kick it off with Haringey. So basically, Haringey Council is struggling and is having to make another £20 million cuts, basically, throughout all departments this year. And it was similar last year. And parks have kind of not had the worst of it, but obviously non-statutory services are usually the first to be cut. And last year, what happened is the council froze the new posts that were not new posts, froze the recruitment where they could, rather than cutting actual jobs. But this year, I'm not quite so clear what's happening, but obviously the council's struggling. And we've got a very strong forum. We work with the council, so we understand it's a problem. I mean, one of the issues that's come out of it is that the councils are desperate and therefore they're commercialising large parks for major public events, major commercial events, such as Finsbury Park, which we know is controversial, but the council are dependent on the £700,000 or £800,000 that they make from those commercial events. So the Friends group who've been trying to stop those completely destructive events taking place. I have kind of worked out a compromise solution to have them less often, maybe every 2 years, but charge more to the commercial organisations that run those events. Okay, that's a bit of a sort of summary from Haringey. Does anybody else want to go next? By the way, I can't see most people because your videos are turned off. You're welcome to turn them on. But if you want to capture my attention, you need to wave your hands around, put your video on, or a yellow hand. So Jane.
I'm in Bromley and we're experiencing similar constraints. One of the things they're particularly doing is focusing on trying to make more money out of their buildings and assets. So things that we've had free or lent to us on rooms that we've been allowed to use, there's now a lot more effort to charge for them. But in the same ways that you understand the financial position they're in, we're in the same position. It's statutory services got to be the priority, but it does mean that there's less access to facilities and services for us. But Larry will be able to talk about the Bromley-wide situation.
Yes. Larry, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, it's fine. Well, obviously, I support what Jane says. I mean, we have the same constraints at the council where they've got no money for anything that other than statutory requirements. So parks and the like are obviously bottom of the list, as it were. What I would like to say is that the Bromley Council uses ID Verdi as a contractor for their parks, and we in the forum have concern about the national insurance and minimum wage issues that will come up next year, and how ID Verdi will be able to manage to cope with that, because obviously they're not going to get any more money from the council in terms of their contract, and yet their costs will inevitably rise. So this is some concern to us. I mean, they've also, ID Verdi have had a lot of staff changes over recent weeks and months. And we're constantly getting new staff coming along who either do know something about horticulture or know absolutely nothing about horticulture and purely are sort of administrative managers, which is not helping Friends groups one bit at all.
Yes, and also there's issues with agency staff being brought in on a temporary basis who don't really understand necessarily.
The grounds maintenance staff are constantly changing, and they mow things when they shouldn't, and they destroy areas that we've been protecting. So there's constant problems in that sort of area.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else want to chip in? It's also like, what are we actually trying to do about it as well? I mean, are people lobbying? Although we're non-statutory service, as we all know, parks provide a whole range of statutory outcomes. They're just not treated as a statutory service, but they're absolutely essential for, as we all know, for our communities. So who wants to sort of chip in next? Alona, Lewisham, and then Peter for Bromley.
Okay, so we're next door to Bromley, but very different. Yeah, the cuts are hitting home, but Lewisham is really working very hard to ensure that cuts don't badly affect the parks. And they have just, well, our contractors who manage the parks are Glendale, and their contract was coming to an end. So Lewisham put out an invite to tender, and we are very relieved as park user groups to say that Glendale have got the contract again, and that's for a number of reasons. They've worked very hard over the last few years to try and understand the needs of the parks and the way park users work. And I think even with reduced numbers of staff that they've had over time, they've managed that. And so many of the Friends groups have a good relationship with the maintenance staff. So in Lewisham, I don't think we're going to feel it as badly as some places. That doesn't mean we won't have battles.
That's a good point. I mean, obviously it helps if your council is doing their best, even though they have to, struggle financially. But obviously some councils may see parks as a very low priority, and then that's, even more essential that we raise our voices collectively in that borough to speak up for parks. Okay, who wants to go next? By the way, you can always put a yellow hand up if you know how to do it, or just wave your hand around generally. Who was next? Somebody's.
I'll come in if I may.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up from the other comments from Bromley, and also the general point that you made about positives. Larry is the key person in that he runs and organises the committee for the forum, but part of that work does involve having partnership meetings with the council. And I think it's a general point that obviously the stronger we can keep our links with our existing groups, and it's been said by others that it doesn't matter whether the thing goes up or down, the income or the problems, at least if you're talking, you stand far better chance of finding solutions. As one of the groups in Bromley, and slightly different from some of the others, the contractor, I think, is doing what they can, but they are very practical points that where there are cuts and if they have staff changes and all the rest of it, they do create pressure. But the very worst scenario is if all that breaks apart and we don't have the contacts. And I don't, a little bit like Alona in Lewisham, I think we've got quite good personal links with a lot of people, and that's in the right direction. So it's just trying to make it sound a bit positive. We mustn't get too negative about this. We've got to fight to keep the good relations going and the best practice that we can. But I do think we're in difficult times.
Okay, who was next? Is it David? You're muted, David.
Sorry about that. Yes, I thought I'd just come in quickly because I can support what Alona is saying about Lewisham, which is brilliant. And it's great news that Glendale's got the contract. I had an email from them and they said they were the preferred bidder. So I guess that they were going to get the contract again. They do what they can in a very good way. I'm going to speak a little bit more on the Greenwich side. I don't know if there's anybody from Greenwich here at the moment. But unlike Lewisham, which has got a biodiversity unit, which is paid for by the council, Greenwich have not got one, despite the efforts of one of our friends who is absolutely desperate. He does a lot of work in the park, particularly in Suckler Park, and he plants hedging and everything else. And along come the council. They know he plants hedging. They know that, but their contractors just go around it and they just trim it all away. They're totally, they've just been trying to cut down hedging like there's no tomorrow. The mowing situation is really bad. And we're really fighting this at the moment. We've got them to stop for the time being, but it's a constant battle. They do not know what they are doing. They are just absolutely ruining the park, all the efforts that people make for ages and ages and ages. It is so soul destroying. We have the River Quaggy running through the park there. It's a feature there. We have problems with it because we've got the Environment Agency to deal with. We've got Greenwich Council, and as it flows through there, and Thames Water from time to time as well, which doesn't help. We are doing what we can, but it is very, very demoralising at the moment, trying to get people to realise how valuable these parks are, and they're not just they're not just there as a floodplain. There is a very valuable, very valuable asset. I mean, the Thames Barrier is now coming to its useful end. It's now being in need of a higher thing there, and similarly, the Quaggy and all the things that go on there. We are stopping in Greenwich. We are stopping the Quaggy from flooding Lewisham, and they're building these massive great tower blocks at the expense of the Quaggy, and it's going to come to roost eventually because the floodplain will not be able to contain the Quaggy, and they just can't see the bigger picture. But we continue to fight. We continue
So
to.
is your group part of the Greenwich Forum?
Yes, I believe they are.
Yes.
I haven't. I don't take. I tend to do more practical stuff rather than worry about the admin of the thing.
Okay.
Go down the river,
Okay.
do clear and things like that. So
okay.
But I thought I'd just make the point that unfortunately Greenwich, at the moment, it's a big fight to get them to realise, and they're cutting back on staff. They're
Yes.
forcing their staff to apply for their own jobs, which is not good.
Right. What, reapply for their own jobs?
And we've got some very good staff in Greenwich, say. On the ground, we have some wonderful, wonderful staff. It's the administration that is the problem, and the council political party.
Okay. So, Jane, you've got your hand up.
Just a quick follow-up to something David was saying around the Quaggy. We've got the two tributaries to the Quaggy going through our park, and we've got a common sewer overflow going into it.
Jane?
So
What borough? What borough
Bromley.
are you? Sorry. Oh, you're in Bromley
Hi.
as well.
Bromley.
We're being taken over by Bromley.
But it rises near our park and runs. Well, we're certainly contributing sewage to the Quaggy. So we're very interested in anything you're doing in terms of campaigning against common sewers. So the next nearest one is Norbury. Hopefully it's not in the park of the lady who represents Norbury.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to add.
Right. So who else wants to jump in? Miriam for Islington.
Yeah, in terms of Islington Borough Council, they've been historically very supportive and are continuing to. They are having to suffer cuts. They've done quite a bit of restructuring and avoiding redundancies where possible. What I would say is they've been quite clever and creative in supporting parks and spinning off some of the works they do into other budgets, in particular using some of the health budgets to support parks activities. The other thing that they've been doing is spinning off some of the things that rangers used to do to charities and other community organisations. For example, Octopus and the Garden Classroom are running a lot of activities for them that also benefit the upkeep of the parks. And they've been quite clever at getting lottery funding. I know here we've had some Sport England funding to improve a play area. Well, we're hoping to get it to improve a basketball court and multi-games area, local local ward funding and that sort of thing. I think we managed to get some grants to put in an extra few hundred trees around the borough. So although there are cuts, they are working around them, and they're very, very supportive of parks, and they always send a representative to the Parks Forum as well. Our next meeting's tomorrow night.
Okay. One of the things I didn't mention in Haringey, or Pat, we'll come to you next, but one of the things I didn't mention in Haringey is council has been really, increasing the number of green flags each year. And this year, unilaterally, a cabinet member just decided to cut the number by half, even though we've got a new 15-year strategy that we all worked on together, in which the aim is to have a green flag for every park that can achieve it. We've got about 23 or something, and we were hoping to get 30 or more. And they're just basically saying that they can't afford it. They're saying standards won't drop, but then they're doing it for financial reasons. So you can draw your own conclusion there. So, we've made a huge fuss about it to make sure everybody knows that this is against their policy, but they're just because of their financial situation. Sorry, Pat, over to you. So that was Haringey. Sorry, Pat.
Now, just Wandsworth to give an update. Wandsworth Council have the general management, maintenance, and arboricultural contracts coming up for renewal. So they've been doing a lot of rejigging. They had put the management of parks out to a separate group about 10 years ago, I guess, 8 years ago. And now they're revisiting and bringing several things back in-house. And to try and improve oversight, efficiency, and their main thing is they really want to strengthen biodiversity. So some people are very anxious about it in the group, and some are intrigued and supportive, and we're keen to see what happens. I mean, it sounds exciting, and it sounds like they've really analyzed this, and they're working very much with us, with the forum, to hear what we have to say. But obviously there's limitations for legal reasons, what they can and can't say at what time. So it's kind of interesting and it's exciting. Okay. So we'll see what happens. And the good thing is that the Continental is the maintenance and the ground maintenance, and their contract has just been renewed, and they are finally their salaries are all being bumped up to London wages, which is brilliant because I think that'll make a huge difference. Okay. So morale's an important part of the puzzle.
Okay. Thank you. That's Wandsworth. So yep. Karen, you got your hand up, but you're muted and I can't see the video's not on. Go on. We should be able to hear you.
Me, Karen. I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Jenny. Oh,
sorry, that's why I wasn't. I was surprised. I mean, I can tell you that Hounslow is Potter's on, and we now have an ecologist, which has been about 7 years in the promising. And she's doing a review of glyphosate because they stopped using it in Hounslow, and everybody's complaining that the pavements are weedy. So they probably will reintroduce it. And as far as I can see, that's the only thing the ecologist has focused on. And parks continue. They've commissioned yet another report. They do every 2 or 3 years, they make another report on biodiversity, and then they write another report.
So Hounslow Forum have sent apologies. Ian from Hounslow Forum sent an apology today. Can't make it, but by the way, I forgot to say we've had 8 or 9 apologies who couldn't make today's meeting. So
sorry, Ian who?
I can't remember the name, but somebody sent an apology from Hounslow Forum. So any other boroughs want to give us a bit of an update, and also what people are actually doing to try to, whether it's lobbying or whether it's working in partnership with the council or filling the gaps or trying to fill the gaps themselves. Obviously, we can't substitute for properly run park services, but a lot of groups do a lot of work in their local parks. I mean, I talk, for example, my group, we do about 90% of the conservation work. We're just our park has been upgraded as a site of nature importance for nature conservation, and it's really down to the work of the Friends. But we don't want to start taking on responsibilities for things like play equipment, paths. You know, it's very much things landscape, nature work is our key focus, and it's making a real difference. But maintenance is going down, and it's a long, slow burn. When maintenance isn't done, it takes years to really, the impact to really show when it's not being properly done. So we've got Jenny and Suzanne. Jenny first, and then Suzanne. I think Suzanne's just recently joined. Jenny first.
Hi. I just wanted to ask if any of the members have had any dealings with an environment officer within the council. I think this person is new in Croydon, and she's communications and sustainable environment, I think, something like that. And she's got some kind of a science degree. She came down a couple of weeks ago. She's going around all the parks in Croydon and looking at the diversity, the biodiversity, and asking what we actually need. And she has actually offered a team of wild meadow experts to come, wildflower meadows, to come down and actually prep an area of the park and advise us on the seeds to put in. And once a year, they'll come round and cut it and rake it at the appropriate time. I was quite impressed by this. So I just wondered, if anybody else had anything like this offered to them.
Are you part of the Croydon Forum?
No.
Because the Croydon Forum's well-established network for all the Friends groups, been going at least 10, 12 years. So it's definitely worth linking up with them, your group.
Yes, okay. I think I did try and find somebody to connect with, and they promised to come back to me, and I don't think they did. So I'll try and get hold of them again. Yeah.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, people may respond to your point. So Brent, Suzanne.
Hi. In answer to biodiversity, an environment officer, we have now got a dedicated biodiversity net gain officer who was one of the leading biodiversity net gain support pioneers in Sutton, which is where biodiversity net gain emerged from. So she's Rosie Wichellow, and she does give advice across boroughs. She's based in Newham herself, and she has been very helpful for us with sync reviews. We have an ecologist who's been with us a very long time. We don't want to lose him. So we are mapping trees across the borough. We have hedgerow maps and ancient tree mapping that's already in place. And the council are now sharing their maps with us. And we are using now Friends of the Earth. I've got a really good map, which I can share with Dave to disseminate. And they're literally blobs across the whole of London. And you can recognise your trees in each area. They've even got the trees in my garden mapped. So it is very, very, biodiversity net gain is very, very powerful for saving biodiversity in the area if you've got a willing officer. It's only 10% net gain, but there are many aspects to do with it. We have just joined Canopy, which is through Dave, the webinar. Canopy is the coalition for trees that started in Haringey, and is now national, and Lawyers for Nature are members. So we have joined as a forum. We've also joined as Brent Friends of the Earth, and we're starting a dedicated tree group, which will be a consortium of people across Brent to try and have tree alerts and to try and actually save more of our mature trees.
So that all sounds really interesting and positive. We're kind of straying from our kind of core theme, which is about struggling with funding and what we can do about it as friends groups and forums.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. But biodiversity net gain, has been bigged up over the last few years as a sort of potential
funding stream.
Source of funding, particularly when there's a lot of development going on in a borough. I don't think it's a panacea or a replacement for proper, funding, but
it is, and that's what we're telling the council as well.
But it's certainly something that people should be aware of, and certainly lobbying for when there's development for money to go into parks and so on. And
yes, it's not letting it go astray. We just got 40,000 back that was about to go into highways and got lost, and nobody was going to tell us where it went, and it's now appeared back in the ecologist's hands. So it's really worth lobbying. And we actually got to know the developer who was saying, where's my 40,000? It should go into biodiversity. And so sometimes, we fought the developer for 15 years. Now we actually worked together and got the biodiversity in. So, be prepared to be flexible. And we will also have continental landscapes. They've got a bit of a bad reputation in Brent at the moment. First year, they need a lot of nurturing. It depends the teams on the ground.
So they're the grounds.
Yes, they are. They are indeed
contracted.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm conscious of time. We've had a sort of good run round different boroughs. Is there anybody who hasn't contributed who wants to, throw in their tuppence worth? I think we're getting a quite good picture. I'm sure that it's similar in across London, similar issues. But obviously, if your borough doesn't have an active forum, it's really important to create such a forum, get all the friends groups working together. And if your forum isn't very active, to get in there and make it as active as possible, because these are challenging times. And unless we link up and lobby and support each other and, work out how to cope with the situation and hopefully improve the situation, then it's just not going to happen. So anybody want to chip in who hasn't spoken? Roger, Newark.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. West End Park is responsibility of City of London Corporation, who are one of the richest local authorities in the country. They have started to make quite significant cuts as well in all their open spaces departments through reorganisation and reducing staffing levels, which affects West Ham Park, but also Epping and all the other spaces. It is the top, and from our point of view as a friends group, it's not impacting on the park yet. But as you were saying earlier, Dave, these things have a long burn, and the things that don't get done now, and the reductions that are made in maintenance and everything else, you see the results of that in several years' time. And at that point, of course, it's extremely costly to get them back. So I absolutely totally support the point that we continue to lobby very hard with City of London and others that if you start to do this, it's a very difficult slope to get back up. So we'll see, but like everybody else, it's you can see which way the position's going at the moment, and it's about being as inventive and as constructive as possible. Newham itself, Newham Borough Council, again, obviously, is suffering like everybody else. They have made not insignificant cuts, but again, they do they do place a great deal of emphasis on open space in the borough because it's so limited. But they are far from immune to the effects of general levels of funding reduction.
Yes. So, I mean, to to finish off this discussion, obviously, local authorities are dependent on the annual funding round that the government is responsible for. And I don't know exactly when it's happening. It's happening in a few weeks, I believe, isn't it? The local authority funding, well, I can't come what they call it, arrangement or settlement or whatever they call it. So we'll see if this government is any different from the previous government. But we certainly can't rely on that. And even if the situation doesn't deteriorate, it's still a situation we don't want to be in, where there's not enough funding for green spaces. I mean, funding's been cut over the last 15 years quite dramatically. So I just want one piece of good news is that, which I was going to bring up a bit later on, but there was a national organisation, Parks Action Group, it was called, that was liaising with government departments about addressing the funding crisis for parks. That was set up about 6-7 years ago. And I was a representative of the National Federation of Parks and Green Spaces, which is the umbrella organisation for the Friends Groups movement. There's 7,000 Friends Groups across the UK, and the national, about 9 or 10 national organisations green space organisations were meeting with government representatives, including Rishi Sunak at one point. He became Chancellor of the Exchequer after he was Parks Minister. It didn't make any difference. He didn't do what he needed to do, which was put more money into parks. So we're hoping with the new Parks Working Group. So Roger, this is a bit of a in the later on in the meeting, but I've done the report now. The good news is they're setting up a replacement for the Parks Action Group, calling it the Park Working Group, and we will certainly be calling on the government to put some proper investment into park services, and not just capital investment, which gets headlines, but it's the maintenance, it's the revenue funding that local authorities need. So we'll see what comes out of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, and just very quickly, I'll just say very briefly about forums. If your borough forum is dormant or has never been set up, and you want help setting up a forum for your borough or reactivating your forum, do contact myself or Laura. Put your details in the chat if you want, or contact us outside of the meeting, and we'll do our best to support friends groups in your borough setting up a forum. It's absolutely essential, as any of us with an active forum knows. Most boroughs, I mean, the majority of boroughs have a forum, but there's huge gaps across London. So on our working groups, we've got a number of London-wide working groups: biodiversity, commercial events, climate resilience, dogs in green spaces, and a new inclusion group about diversity and inclusion in our movement and in green spaces. And we're looking for people to come forward to chair, because there used to be independent groups, and then because Laura's so good, she's ended up somehow or other being the animator, the chair of each of those working groups, but she's not well and she can't carry on doing that. So these are all very useful working groups, but in the last few months they haven't really met. So I don't know if there's any updates from any of those groups. Alona, you might have an update from the biodiversity group. No, there isn't one. Okay, so basically, each of those groups. Roger, do you want to? You're waving.
Yes, I am. We had from the Climate Resilience Group, we had a webinar on middle of October, 15th of October, which I think Laura circulated all the details of, which I can just briefly give a resume of, if that's useful.
Yes, please. As a good example, what all groups could be doing.
We had a lecture from Dr. Nick Cryer from RHS. This was specifically about the impact of rainwater changes and climate change on planting in London open spaces. So about 25 people attended. It was a very useful presentation and discussion afterwards. Certainly the RHS will be very happy to continue working with us, exploring the subjects, promoting the issues. We asked and they have given us a number of recommendations of planting guides and so on, changes to the climate, which Laura certainly circulated some of the details of. So yeah, it was a very successful event.
Do you want to say what the RHS stands for?
Royal Horticultural Society.
Okay.
Whose main office in the London area is down at Wisley, just south of southwest London.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we've made a good contact there and we'll follow that up over time.
Okay. Does any of other working groups just want to give us a brief updates? What about the commercial events working group, where they had key friends groups in parks that are being used for big commercial concerts, were supporting each other? I'm not sure. Haven't heard much over the last 3 or 4 months from that group. So, okay. All right, so I think that the issue now with the working groups, it's really important that people in those groups, make sure that they keep active and keep going, but they shouldn't be relying on Laura to do that. I mean, Laura gets a certain limited number of hours in which to support the London network and also Go Parks London project, but she's struggling with her health at the moment, so none of the groups can rely on her to keep everything ticking over. So you can either put your details if you're interested in joining any of those groups that I mentioned, or even better, if you want to help coordinate those groups, put the details in the chat, and then we can follow it up afterwards. But I think Laura's going to email all the groups, all the members of those different groups, and say, someone needs to come forward to coordinate the next meeting or event. Okay, so and obviously people are involved with their local, but I've just seen a message in the chat. In Croydon, it's really important to be with your local borough-wide forum, but these are London-wide working groups of that I'm talking about for the London network. So finally, on that subject, other London-wide groups, and I'm going to come to you in a minute, people that are here from London-wide groups to give report updates. But other London-wide groups have kind of cottoned on to this kind of seminar discussions for friends groups, which we've been organising for about 10 years, and others are beginning to do similar things. Like, for example, the London Wildlife Trust organised a couple of seminars on sites of importance for nature conservation. And there's a review currently going on.
Wildlife Trust.
Pardon?
London Wildlife Trust.
Yes.
Wildlife Trust.
Trust. Yes. Yes, they've organised a couple of seminars about sites of importance for nature conservation, which were very useful because the way sinks are reviewed and managed is an issue that's being kind of looked into, and hopefully improvements can be made. So, and I think CPRE have organised a couple of seminars, Campaign to Protect Rural England as well, have organised a couple of seminars. So I'm gonna move on, and just looking at the agenda, just very briefly mention our social media.
For London.
Sorry, Desmond, what do you?
For London.
What about London? Sorry. Yeah, so we're the London-wide network, so our working groups are London-wide, but obviously every borough needs an active forum as well. So I just want to briefly mention our media, and then it's over to London Parks and Gardens and MPGA and so on to give us updates about what their brief updates about what they're currently doing. So just about our social media, Laura continues to produce monthly bulletins, which you should be getting on a regular basis. And you're welcome to obviously forward them to all the groups that you have contacts with. So our Facebook page is active, our website, we want to improve. And I think Laura's going to send out a survey, which hopefully people will fill in about ways in which people feel that our website, lfgn.org.uk, can be improved. And
Would
so
you give us that address again, please?
LFGN, London Friends of Green Spaces Network, lfgn.org.uk. We put all our minutes on there. We also
Thank you.
Our recorded seminars. This one will go on there as well, and so on as a resource. So, okay, I'm going to move now to London-wide partners. So I don't know, Tim, you want to kick off about London Parks and Gardens?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, London Parks and Gardens have been for a little while struggling to keep up with the sheer volume of planning applications impacting heritage parks, let alone, all parks, but just the heritage parks that we deal with. We have lost a lot of volunteers from our planning group, simply because they were disheartened, ground down from constantly replying to the sheer volume of the planning applications they're having to deal with.
Tim, just hold on a second.
London Parks and Gardens, yes.
Tim, hold on a second. Desmond, do you want to just mute your video because we can hear conversations? Thanks. You just mute yourself. Sorry, Tim, carry on.
That's okay. So we've been looking at the way we manage planning applications, and one of the changes that we are proposing, and we're just getting backing from our funders, is to look at creating a list, come up with a criteria to create a list of London's most threatened heritage green spaces, and we will focus resources on the top few on that list. It doesn't mean we won't be responding to all cases, but it means we can better focus the resources we have got to be more effective. So that's the big change. London Open Gardens will be going ahead in 2025. Tickets for that will be going on sale. This is getting to commercial bits, so I'll skip that, but it will be happening in the new year. I think that's probably it, but if anybody's got any questions, either put them in the chat or get in touch afterwards. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thanks for that. So Elspeth, I know you're very new in the Metropolitan, is it Public Gardens Association, but you just want to sort of introduce yourself formally and say a bit.
Sorry, I don't have a lot to say. I've just joined really to provide some sort of company secretary services. So I've come to this meeting because I wanted to find out about what all of you do. And I know that we've got very close relationships with your group, with London Parks and Gardens. But I've literally only been to one meeting with the MPGA. But as I said before, we're a grant-making body. We provide small funds. We also have special projects like Bulbs for London and Elms for London. So what we tend to do is provide sort of funding for public spaces. my perception is that we're besieged at the moment by schools, and schools aren't really public spaces, unfortunately, because they have safeguarding issues. So there's a bit of a contradiction. I think we may be looking to try something new in that department. I think things went very quiet during the pandemic, as far as I can tell. And we're just sort of gathering ourselves and kind of gearing up for a program for next year. But quite how it's going to shake out, I don't really know. We've just had an AGM. Our chairman, Rex Thornborough, has stood down, and Nick Evans has just taken over. He'll be chairing his first meeting in December. We're also going to be looking at fundraising. I mean, some of our fundraising is to support things like Elms for London, and we get a contribution with bulbs from tailors, but we never know how much they're going to have left over, and therefore how many people are actually going to be able to benefit from what we have to offer. But we really need to know. I mean, I'll be very grateful to get some. I'll perhaps email you afterwards or something. I'd be very grateful to have a look at your previous papers, because I've been trying to take some notes during this, but I mean, there are so many projects. I'm absolutely swamped, and you all obviously have been working together for a long time. We were actually asked to sort of lobby a little bit, so I was interested to hear Tim Webb's sort of report about planning applications. I actually have a housing background. I worked for sort of over 6 years for Notting Hill Genesis, which is a big developer. So it's interesting to see it from the other side. Certainly, we had ecologists involved in some of the sessions. But anyway, that's my own personal experience. I'm really here to learn this time. I was sort of asked to come along so that I could, be thrown in at the deep end and learn how you work and what's going on. And the most obvious thing is just that there is just so much. There are so many local groups, all of which with very particular sets of circumstances.
So
I'm certainly interested in open spaces because, like you, I'm in Haringey and I know what happened to Finsbury Park, and what happens when they have some of the sort of so-called festivals which exclude local people, and take over green spaces with fences and everything else for months at a time in the summer, just when all the kind of people who might support open spaces and nature and conservation and biodiversity would like to use their parks, and they're excluded. The commercial events actually exclude the public, so that's another thing. But again, it's not what the MPGA does, it's what I'm interested in personally.
Okay. So basically, though, if you want people to take up your small grants program, do something for our next bulletin. Let us know.
Yes.
I mean, our bulletins go to all the friends groups that we have the contacts for.
That would be very helpful. We seem to do
Bounce.
this one. We seem to report back quarterly. We look at all the projects that we've had and sort of authorize the grants on our quarterly committee meetings. There's one coming up. So
Okay, yeah, let everybody know, and then individual groups can apply.
can make applications.
We're
Yes, they
talking
can.
about small grants, £100, £200, something like
Oh, no,
that.
sometimes it's a bit more than that, but it
Okay.
depends very much on. I mean, they're assessed for their public benefit.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a question of how much we give. Obviously, they're limited, but how much public benefit will stem from them.
Okay. Tim, you're trying to get a second bite of the cherry. Go on then.
Yeah, sorry. The conversations there and what you were asking about earlier about the commercial events things just is chiming with conversations I've been having. And I'm not stepping forward before you say, well done, Tim. I'm not stepping forward to be chair of that group, but I am interested in finding out more
Well, you
about
can certainly
what it
be.
is you're proposing.
You can certainly be a member of that group. Put your details in the chat.
Okay.
I mean, all the key major parks, Victoria Park and Brockwell Park, I think, and Finsbury Park, their friends groups are part of that working group. So yes, it's a very useful group to be in. I mean, CPRE recently, it's a Campaign to Protect Rural England, have set up, they initially a London group, I think it may now be national, on parks under threat. I think they're calling it Green Space Champions. Is that right? No, Defenders, Green Space Defenders Network. So if anybody is in a borough or where in a forum where you've got local parks and green spaces under threat, or your own space is under threat, do put your details in the chat, or contact CPRE direct, CPRE London. So okay, now there's a couple of other well, there's a few other London-wide or national updates I want to give. I'll keep it brief. And then, amazingly enough, we're moving towards the end of our meeting. Suddenly, it seems to be all over by the shouting. So I'll just update you about some other London-wide networks. There's the More Natural Capital network, which brings together environmental organisations, particularly those concerned with green spaces, but also transport and climate change and so on, which is a lobbying network which lobbies at election time. And I think that will be preparing for the next round of council elections, or I'm not quite sure what the next lot of elections are. I haven't been able to attend a couple of their most recent meetings, but that's an important network of getting London-wide groups to work together. Now, the group that we work with most often is Parks for London. Unfortunately, they haven't attended today. And they champion green spaces across the capital, and they work in particular with all the local authority park services. And every 2 years now, they do an audit of each London borough, and they publish it as in a document called Good Parks for London. And I think a week or two ago, they had their Good Parks for London celebration event. They produced their document. I believe now if you go to Parks for London, you'll be able to find the link, find out what they say about your borough, but they give scores for different aspects such as community involvement, biodiversity, maintenance, and so on, different themes. And then each borough gets a score. It's not really competitive, but that's just the kind of framework they use to try and improve standards. So I do recommend checking out that very detailed and quite inspiring report they do, Good Parks for London. So, okay, a couple of other things. So I was contacted as part of this Parks Working Group, national kind of liaison with government. I was contacted recently about a new legacy funding, which is the Queen Elizabeth II legacy. So there's early days, but they're planning next year to have some kind of major funding for a legacy for Queen Elizabeth, who died, I don't know exactly when, a year ago, whenever it was. And but I think there's going to be a big focus, if not an entire focus, on green spaces. So look out for it. We've been saying, or I was saying, and other people have also said, let's not have a competitive funding program. Let's spread the money out to each borough and work out a way of getting the most out of it, and where people don't have to waste lots and lots of time applying for funding that they don't actually get because so many people are applying for it. So there's going to be a new funding linked to Queen Elizabeth II. So that's just a bit of an update. Finally, the National Federation of Parks and Green Spaces, which is the umbrella organisation for the whole Friends Groups movement. We are the London section. And the actual members of the National Federation are the forums. And all forums are welcome to attend the annual meeting for forums next Saturday. So if your forum hasn't yet heard about the AGM and the national meeting next Saturday, 11 till 1, it's on Zoom. And I know that some people here will be attending for their forum. Then put your details in the chat, and I'll make sure you get an invite. It's for representatives of forums rather than individual friends groups, and there will be a discussion I can't remember what the discussion is. Certainly at that meeting on Saturday. So yes, really. Is there any other kind of reports people want to do of kind of London-wide or national significance? And then I'll just move on to our next meetings. Just an update on what's happening, next year, basically. So, John.
Well, I don't know if Elspeth is aware of the chat situation in this forum, Dave.
I haven't looked
Do
at it.
do you want to raise anything? I haven't been able to look at it myself because
just to point out that several of us have made use of the bulb contributions that she mentioned, and just to say they've been brilliant, and it's a very important part for some of us in green spaces to make use of. I just want to make that point because she's new to this, and maybe she doesn't know that many of us have made use of that in the past and will continue to make use of it in the future.
Elspeth?
Well, I thought some of you might, but I don't know who's had what.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm afraid.
Yes.
But very good to hear that. Thank you. I'll pass that message on in a couple of weeks.
Good point. Anybody else who wants to kind of chip in here with any kind of strategic issue? And then I'm going to move on to just talking about our coming meetings, and we might have an early finish, amazingly enough. Don't know how we managed to do that, but we did.
Hello, it's Blake here. Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah, go on.
Right, what happened earlier, because I'm a disabled person, I use assistive technology to access this webinar, and it clashes with the webinar sometimes. So when I said what I said, I read into my computer and it writes for me. So that's why you heard what you heard.
Okay.
It would be a good thing to do something around accessibility, actually. I don't know what other people think. Maybe leave it in the chat. Maybe we could do something in the future. And by the way, I would just like to say, I wish Laura a swift recovery, and you've done a great job chairing the meeting. So thank you very much, and carry on. Good work.
Yes, I mean, basically everybody carry on your good work. I mean, we all work so hard as volunteers, so let's appreciate each other. So on accessibility, actually, we've got something that touches on accessibility, but not specifically for people maybe with sort of accessibility issues and mobility issues. But one of the big things that we thought that we should discuss is the importance of cafes and toilets in green spaces, public green spaces. So that will be one of our themes that we'll be discussing fairly early on in the new year. So I haven't got the list in front of me, but I've just been discussing with Laura our program for next year. And certainly we're starting off on the 13th of January with a social event, which is our traditional thing, which is at the CPRE offices in Cowcross Street in Farringdon. And that will be a kind of informal, chatty, nibbles. And I usually do a quiz as well, which usually goes down well. And then we'll have our kind of program of various meetings and seminars and so on, which we'll publicize. But I've made a note about accessibility. There is, as I say, one of the discussions we've already earmarked is for cafes and toilets, which is an accessibility issue. But yeah, okay. Is there now any other business anybody wants to raise before we close the meeting staggeringly early?
Yes, can I just jump in here? In Newham, quite a lot of friends of parks, but we've got no forum and we've got a group. I think Laura tried to start a group, but she didn't have much success. Can you give me any information on that?
Yeah, Roger. Roger was involved. Roger, what do you want to say about how's it going?
Well, there is the Newham Green Forum, Desmond, which is an umbrella group for the whole of Newham. It deals with open spaces, but it deals with other and involves other green groups as well. That's quite a up and coming forum. They run the annual Newham Green Fair, which this coming year will be its third year. So they're quite an active group. And if you're not in contact with them, certainly I'll put you in contact, outside this meeting, and something that you should be involved in, particularly with what you're trying to do in Plashett Park.
Plaistow Park.
Plaistow.
Plaistow Park.
Plaistow Park. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just
Roger, have you got Desmond's details?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Roger hasn't said anything about this, but it was the 150-year anniversary of West Ham Park. And early in June, they did a really great event. It was fantastic. So I'd just like to congratulate you guys in running.
Thank you.
That's Roger's local friends group.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Any other business before we close the meeting? Well, I'll give an extra couple of minutes if anybody wants to put any details in the chat before they leave. Otherwise, anybody want to say anything? Okay. So basically, thank you for attending, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. And however difficult the challenges are that lie ahead, let's keep a smile on our face but be determined that we're going to champion our parks effectively. And the best way to do that is to work together. So good luck in the coming months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.